And we turn our focus now to understanding the Generation Z's financial mindset with the aim of fostering investment. Head of Behavioral Finance at Momentum Investments, Paul Nixon, speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time, Paul. It's an incredibly fascinating and exciting time given the advancements in technology for the Generation Z. Talk to us about the trend in product offering as well as the will, really, for the Gen Z to get into the role of investment.
Good morning, Tim and thanks for having me, and good morning to all the viewers as well. So it's a very interesting question. I think some of the trends that we're seeing definitely are Gen Zs or people who were born in around about 2000, for example, or just after, very inclined towards digital offerings. So digital natives, they've grown up in a time where the internet is everywhere. And also very present orientated as well. So we can see in that savings behavior as well that your Gen Zs are interested in investing in products, but for a very, very short amount of time as well. So they're very present orientated and look for that security of being able to access those funds. And, I think maybe one other slightly more concerning trend, I think, is definitely where, Gen Zs are getting their advice from, So social media platforms, for example, like TikTok. And if you look at some of the TikTok videos as well, you've got people there giving advice that have very little sort of formal, training, for example. So you can see that, TikTok as well as a platform that is geared to get reaction, so you would see very extreme views, for example, as well. So a very interesting time, I think, as well in understanding Generation Z as a new investor.
Interesting that you mention the platforms where this particular group would be getting advice from. To what extent does that speak to the industry as well as the market in approaching Gen Zs with the right type of products as well as advice? Because really one could pick up anything from any of these platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's a few things that are probably linked to that. So, Gen Zs have a different perception of risk, and that's quite an important understanding or, insight to have. So then why I say that is basically, so look at someone like me, for example, a Gen Xer. I mean, we used to think that banks were very secure, right?
Yeah.
But Gen Zs have grown up in a time when banks were actually, the global financial crisis, were part of the problem. So they don't view banks as that level or having that level of security. But cryptocurrency, for example, is something that myself, like a Gen Xer, would see as very volatile. But, again, Gen Zs don't have that perception of risk in things like cryptocurrency. So there's a couple of things here that are important. We need to understand the market a little bit better. We need to also provide different platforms that give access to different kinds of investments as well for Gen Z. So for example, things like micro saving. Gen Zs don't necessarily have the funds to invest, they wouldn't have access to a lot of the investment products that are out there. So they need access to smaller investment vehicles. And unfortunately, or at least it seems that, platforms like crypto are offering access for very small amounts, which might be or explain the fact that, I think almost 50% of people who own crypto are Gen Zs. So it seems to be a platform that's attracted a lot of attention and investment. One reason is probably the perception of lower risk, or not as much of that, the risk factor. And the second is also access. You can invest in these things with smaller amounts, I think, which is important to understand.
Lastly, Paul, I think let's also talk about the dynamics that have changed in the economic climate given COVID-19. How much of that is at play in terms of how the market speaks to Gen Zs?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a very important question as well. So I think, it kind of goes back to the whole micro saving proposition as well. So I think we need to understand that not just Gen Zs, by the way. I mean, I think that, micro saving is a trend that is going to be important for many South Africans. So don't wait until you have 2 or 3 or 500 rand a month to save. If you've got 10 rand spare, try and put it away. So I think that, that is going to be, and there are platforms available for these things, but they're not really as well advertised or well known that people know they have access to these things. So I think it might be channeling or forcing people into more riskier propositions with access, like crypto, for example. But I think with what COVID has taught us and the fact that people are under a lot of financial pressure, the most important thing is starting to save as soon as possible and not waiting. That's an important lesson.
Thank you so much for your time. Paul Nixon from Momentum Investments talking to us about investments for the Gen Z.